Today we're wrapping up Infrastructure Week on the Daily Blog, and we're talking about VCS. Now, we have a lot of other videos explaining other parts of our infrastructure and how we enable all sorts of cool stuff in a WebRTC call. But what if you need to record that call? Or what if you didn't listen to my last video and you're still doing live streaming with RTMP and HLS like my grandma? I'll let it slide this time, but you should really check out that last video about ILS. It's linked down here. First, a quick side note before we begin, everything I'm about to say applies to both our cloud recording and our RTMP live streaming. So every time I say record or daily.js start recording function, just imagine I'm saying record or live stream or daily.js start recording or start live streaming function. Thanks for letting me save some syllables. So VCS, it stands for Video Component System, but you can go ahead and forget that because it's really just kind of a backronym we chose because we wanted to name it after this thing, the Atari VCS with its beautiful wood paneling. VCS is our system for solving the problem of taking all this rich interactivity and layout flexibility and power of a real-time WebRTC experience and flattening it down to a single output that can be used in a more traditional video post-processing pipeline. That's a reasonably simple thing to do for general purpose video calling use cases. I mean, if you've used Daily Prebuilt, you know what I mean. Prebuilt has a grid mode display that looks like this and an active speaker mode display that looks like this. And if you do a screen share, it pretty much looks like this too. These are all pretty easy to just put in a 16:9 rectangle for recording. You just kind of replicate whatever this part of the window looks like and that's your video. But man, if I could just make the background color my brand color instead of black and round the corners of these tiles a little bit, maybe put my logo down here, show people's names, no, just move them up just a little bit, I could take this recording straight to my on-demand pipeline, right? Or maybe you're building an experience that doesn't fit in an obvious rectangle. How do you make a recording of a bunch of people walking around a spatial audio app? Can I maybe even grab the custom chat from my live event platform and make it part of the recording somehow too? VCS is how you do all of that. VCS is how you do all of that. It's an app framework running on Daily's infrastructure that can take all the audio and video tracks in a Daily call and build a single output video based on instructions you provide. In this video series, I've been drawing calls with this kind of gray server here representing the call server. I'll add an orange server over here to represent VCS, and we'll go from there. So how do you provide those instructions? Well, you program VCS using JavaScript and more specifically React. Now, wait, don't click away yet. You don't actually have to write any React if you don't want to. I'm getting there. Just give me like another minute, I promise. So VCS programs are called compositions. VCS ships with one that's ready to use out of the box, and you don't have to write any code at all to use it. It's called the baseline composition, and it's how most people are actually using VCS today. The source of the baseline composition is included in the VCS SDK download, though, so you can tweak it to do exactly what you want or use it as a guide for writing your own composition. When you start a VCS process using the daily.js start recording function, you specify which composition you want to use for that recording process. I guess they're kind of like the cartridges you'd stick into that Atari. Compositions have three kinds of input and one output. The output is the easy part. Every 1/30th of a second, a composition renders a video frame. That frame gets combined with the selected audio tracks, more on that in a minute, into an output video. Now, the three inputs. The first is the track data from the daily call. These lines are the media tracks going from the call server to the VCS engine, and these lines are the VCS engine sending some or all of them to your composition. By default, the composition gets every video and audio track on the call. As participants join or leave and mute or unmute, those tracks come and go as well. The composition gets an ordered list of tracks called slots from the engine. So your composition will have code that might say something like, display whatever videos in slot 1 here and the video in slots 2 through 6 over here. You have the ability to specify which participants show up in those slots and in what order they appear. For example, if you're recording a webinar and you only want the host, cameras and mics and screen shares, you can specify that with the participants property. And of course, you can update that property while a recording is in progress to change who appears in the recording. The second type of input is configuration parameters. I mentioned earlier that VCS compositions are React apps, but they don't really have a GUI in the typical sense because they're running on a server somewhere. Instead, your interactive interface to the composition is an object you pass to the daily.js update recording function from your app over here. It's up to you to make sure your composition knows what to do with whatever you're passing in through the composition params. Maybe you made a basic composition that just shows slot 0 next to slot 1 with rounded corners and a background color out here. You'd probably declare inset, corner radius, and BG color as composition params. Then you could change the background color live while you're recording by passing a new value for BG color in an update recording call. VCS handles a lot of the call details, like making sure the video tiles have the right names attached to them. But honestly, why bother? The baseline composition has those, as well as a boatload of other available configuration params. In fact, we made a whole dang website just so you could play with them. Check the description for a link to the VCS simulator. You can even use the sidebar in the simulator to create a properly formatted update recording call based on whatever you change in the simulator. It's super handy for figuring out how VCS is going to behave. I use this thing all the time. The third input is assets. I guess it's more like the 2.5th input because it's very similar to composition params. The assets object has identifiers as keys and URLs as values. You can only set assets when you start recording because we have to pre-fetch them. Like configuration params, your composition is designed to know about certain asset keys. The baseline composition knows about several common assets for things like backgrounds, overlays, logos, and icons. You can even add custom JavaScript to the baseline composition with an asset. I'll link to a blog post about that in the description as well. Okay, that was a lot. Take a breath. If you're still with me, I want to reward your perseverance by coming at this from the other direction. Let me show you a quick 15-second video I made completely with VCS, except for the jaunty background music, and afterward I will walk you through how I did all of it.
Hey, I'm Chad.
And I'm Marco. We're engineers at Daily.
Our APIs help developers build great real-time and live video experiences.
We're here to show you VCS, our powerful new compositing tool for live streams and recordings.
We use it to make this video right now, like this is the code for it.
Okay, love you, bye.
That's perfect, we're using this one.
Making something like that is actually not as hard as you think. I used the baseline composition, so I didn't write any React code myself at all. In fact, I wrote the entire recording page in Vanilla.js out of old man spite. I included all the overlay images, like the framed cutout here, as assets when I called start recording. Anytime you see anything change in the video, like when it went to this shot, for example, it's because I have a bunch of buttons on a really janky HTML page I made, and I'm clicking a button that calls update recording with different composition params. One button changes the image.assetName param. One button updates the participants property to switch the slots so that Marco and I change sides. One button sets the show text overlay config param to true to show the bottom text. And another button sets show text overlay back to false to hide it. All of those are just different things passed through the update recording function, and I used the VCS simulator to help me build all the actual JavaScript calls. The hardest part was just practicing clicking the buttons while I was talking. Look, we're just starting to scratch the surface here. There's enough functionality in the baseline composition alone to keep you busy for a very long time. And that's even before you start thinking about what's possible with your own compositions. You could do stuff like render an iframe into your video or dynamically resize video tiles based on audio activity or pretty much anything you can think of. So go make something awesome, and thanks for watching.